Hey, Brad.
Yeah.
You gotta listen to this. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go.
Turn camera.
Mark.
102, take one.
With overlap, action, please.
No, nothing's happening.
You just wait.
Action, Orson, please.
Just do anything?
No, sorry. Yeah, rolling.
102, take two.
This is a very drunk Orson Welles.
The French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. So Paul Masson.
He's soused.
102, take three.
Action, please.
The French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne,
much like me.
Dated. So
Fermented in the bottle. Just like me. Oh my God, he is absolutely, he's out there, man. He is, this is from a Paul Masson commercial?
This is, I think it's late 60s, early 70s, Paul Masson commercial. Orson Welles, drunk as a skunk.
Oh my
and
God.
Clearly showed up for work. And the first take is him just staring abjectly into middle space going, "Nah." You know when you're about 5 minutes from passing out, you're like, no. I mean, it speaks, though, to his genius and professionalism that he is drunk as a skunk, and they're like, line, please, and he delivers it. Like, granted, it's super drunk and slurry, but he knew his lines.
Yeah, well, imagine for a moment that you're Orson Welles, and it's the late 60s, early 70s, and you are America, you have created America's best beloved movie. You are considered to have created the best movie in American cinema, and you're considered to be the best actor or one of the best actors in American film. And the problem is that when you did all of this, when you were young, you weren't getting paid residuals. I don't think he got like residuals through the studio system for stuff like that. Probably didn't make a whole lot of money. So now you're in the autumn of your years and you've got to do commercials for Mrs. Paul's Fish Sticks and Paul Masson wine just to pay the bill. I would be drunk too. Could you imagine? Holy
You're not wrong. I mean, it's the parallel between cartooning there actually is the way you describe that is pretty strong for a whole host of Marvel and DC artists, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's not like Len Wein is driving around his solid gold car from Inventing Wolverine. Like, there's a whole lot of careers that are just like Paul Masson commercials there. The French champagne.
I like particularly how French champagne gets slurred and the CH and the SH just turns into slush. The French champagne. Bottled in the wine. One of the greatest. Still, he's got a good voice. I mean, drunk off of his keister, he's still got a great delivery.
Oh, I bet he was amazing at parties. But also probably at the end of the party hitting you up to borrow $100 towards the end of it.
And by the way,
it's been delightful talking to you. Do you have $100 that I created Citizen Kane?
And by the way, I said he may have been one of the best actors in American cinema history. He wasn't, by the way. Those other two people in the commercial who are holding stone faces through all of this, those two people deserve a Lifetime Achievement Award for Best Acting performance for not cracking up. They are like statues. They don't even crack a smile.
Oh my God. If you're listening to this, pause for a second and go have a 9-minute rewatch of this 1 minute outtakes of him, and watch, as Brad said, watch how stony-faced and perfect the other actors are, facing what is clearly the drunkest actor they've ever seen. I mean, imagine the smell coming off of him as he sits 18 inches from them. They know that he's been into the Chablis, and yet they've got to do this commercial with him.
Could you imagine the executives at Paul Masson Wine before this? They're like, we got Orson Welles to do the commercial. Did you? You know what? Send him some of our wine before the shoot. He'd enjoy that. That would be a classy thing for us to do, don't you think?
You know what? Like the working backwards on this, the big mistake was the line producer who's like, "All right, I'm preparing his trailer. Let's see, we've got some cheeses, some crackers. You know what? It's a Paul Masson commercial. I'll put out one glass of wine for him. Cut to
hide some more in the closet.
Yeah, cut to he's had 19 more since that first glass of wine.
The cheese still hasn't been touched.
Neither have his shoes.
Oh my God! You got me with that one. Oh, Orson freaking Welles.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about Orson Welles and making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, editor of Webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc.
You genuinely got me. I thought I lost you. Oh. No, and I'm Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's hour of comics advice has been fermented in the bottle and made possible by your support at patreon.com/Comic Lab. And Dave, did we get that drunk doing drunk Comic Lab?
No, I don't know if any human has ever gotten that drunk.
Holy
Think about what it took.
moly.
He was not a small human being.
No, he wasn't.
That's like,
no, he wasn't.
have you ever heard about
Particularly
the quantity of wine that Andre the Giant would have to drink to get drunk? That's Orson Welles level of wine.
He's just, wow. Yeah, do yourself a favor. It's in YouTube, just Orson Welles drunk. We'll bring you the link, and I swear to goodness, you will watch it about 10 times over and laugh yourself until you're crying.
There's also an amazing drunk one of him doing a frozen peas commercial, and it is like chef's kiss. It is so good.
Well, now you could go down a rabbit hole because those...
I did go down a rabbit hole.
Because if you start with that, then you get actors who can either are fine actors or consider themselves to be fine actors getting really testy because they've got to cut these commercials. You'll hear Orson Welles ridiculing the guy working the board, and then it's a short jump over to William Shatner cutting an announcement in which the board operator, in a moment that could only be called insanity, suggests to William Shatner how to read a line, and Shatner just methodically, the way somebody might pluck feathers from a goose getting ready for dinner, just disassembles this guy verbally. Shatner repeats the line back in pitch perfect horribleness of how the board operator suggested it, and then continues to say, and that's what you're going to send uptown to the people who are paying for this commercial. And by the way, I've got 5 or 6 more lines, and you're going to tell me how to read each and every one of them, and I'm going to read them exactly like you tell me, and then we're going to send that uptown. And if they've got a problem with it, I'm going to point them to you because you're telling me how to act. Oh, it is so delightful. The Schadenfreude that you feel listening to this is just amazing.
Schadenfreude, Brad.
Did I say that wrong too?
No,
now that's
I'm
not a French word.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news about pronunciations. I'm not going to. Oh man,
is it not Schadenfreude?
Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude sounds like when you're oh, he's got the big Schadenfreude, doesn't he? Oh, sure. Oh yeah, he's got that Schadenfreude. I don't know. I'm still about nonplussed. Nonplussed killed me the other week. But also, before we move on, I know this is now 10 minutes on Orson Welles, but fermented in the bottle is the shittiest marketing line I've ever heard.
Yeah. Fermented in the bottle. In other words, when they bottled it, it was grape juice. On the way to the grocery store, it fermented.
Yeah. They're basically saying we didn't wait for the frickin' thing to do. Oh, my God. Fermented in the bottle. Like, that's like your Twinkie's not done until you open up the package.
And then not.
Oh, man. All right, Brad. Well, let's get into it because it's just you and me this week, and we've got a lot to catch up on, my friend. So here we go.
We got a lot of ground to cover.
A lot of ground to cover and a lot of words to mispronounce. So let's get started. So first off, I want to talk to you about Patreon giveaways. Now, I got an email from Patreon this week that said, "Hey, Dave Kellett, you are currently in violation of our terms of service." And I went, ooh, that's not good.
You don't want to hear that.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that, especially when Patreon serves up as many dollars as it does to me. So I was like, okay, how do I fix this? Here was what my problem was. I was thinking that this was a kindness, and I was giving away a sketch illustration every week, and I would mail it out on my own dime, and I would by various means pick a patron to give it to. Sometimes it would be pop trivia about the Drive comic. Sometimes it would be first to post. Sometimes it would be I would enter it into an Excel document and let Excel pick randomly one of the entries. I would do all sorts of ways of doing it just to make it fun. But it turns out, and I kind of knew this already from my Mattel days, it turns out that I was in violation of federal raffle laws, which got started back in the days to keep the mob from fixing raffles. And what they would do is they would do a concept called pay to play. And basically, because I was giving it only to patrons who were behind a paywall, it was a pay-to-play raffle. They had to pay, right, to be involved in the raffle.
Oh,
and so
see, I knew that lotteries and raffles were not kosher on Patreon, but I didn't know the reasoning behind it. That makes perfect sense and that's why a lot of times on TV, they say that you don't need to buy a proof of purchase to enter. You can write in and they'll send you a proof of purchase to enter or something like that.
Yes. So everybody in the back of their mind is familiar with the phrase "no purchase necessary."
Yeah,
right? Like
that's what I was looking for. Yeah.
For McDonald's or Burger King or, a toy that you get. So when we were at Mattel, there was a whole third-party law firm that we would contract with in Northern California that all they did was handle raffles because the legality of it is pretty well codified at this point, both on the federal and at the state level. And you've got to check off all the boxes. So basically, I had run afoul of raffle laws by giving away artwork on my Patreon page. So here is the way that I have found to work around it. You can do giveaways and you can do it on Patreon, but you have to make it a public posting and you have to make it so that you don't have to be a patron to get the giveaway. And you're like, okay, well, then what the heck is the benefit of being the patron? Well, the average person, even if this is posted publicly, is still not going to be paying attention to your Patreon, right?
Right.
They're not going to be like, what's Brad doing today over on Patreon? Oh, look, he just 2 seconds ago posted a giveaway. And then even though you don't need to be a patron to get the giveaway, they're getting the notification quicker because they're getting an email. And so as far as I can tell, I am now back in the good graces by giving away the illustrations publicly and by making it available to anyone to grab. So
how do you get entered into the raffle in this? You make a public post and then you say, if you want to be entered in the raffle, put your name in the comments?
Well, now what I do is all the remaining ones for this year are going to be pop quizzes. So it's like, what's the last name of this character, right? That's the thing. Or, what is the name of this ship in the strip? And so it's more of a knowledge-based giveaway. And then, granted, listen, I'm sure that if I drilled down into the nitty-gritties of giveaway laws, there might yet be one. But as of right now, I'm still in the good graces of Patreon by making it public and by making it that anyone can answer and post. Because you don't have to have payment to have a Patreon account. You can have one for free. I don't know if you knew that. And so you can post. But then I also make it available so that you can email me the answer. So there's different ways to enter, basically.
Oh.
And I just do it where the first one to post the correct answer, whether by email or by message board, or is the winner. And so that's the way I make it work for me.
So now when you do these raffles, do you do them at different times during the day so that, for example, if you've got some backers in Australia, for example, they're like, oh, geez, when you post this at 11 o'clock Pacific time, I'm still in bed. Do you kind of spread it out a little bit?
That was almost like a setup because I was literally going to say that in the next sentence. That's amazing that you. I'm not joking. That's exactly what I was going to say next.
I'm one step ahead of you, man. I'm just setting you up, and you just knock them down.
The French champagne fermented in the bottle. There is a winemaker named Parmesan. Yeah.
He
I'm
starts
gonna keep-
tapping the bottle with his fingers. Though you know how drunk people, when they're talking and they gesture to something and they'll start tapping it, and instead of like pointing to it, it'll be like 13 or 14 taps. You just get bonk, 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 bonk. This
Like the-
bottle, bonk, 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 bonk.
The synapse that would normally tell you, like, hey, stop tapping the bottle is like, it's over there going, la-da-da.
And meanwhile, Meryl Streep and Daniel Day-Lewis stone-faced over there, just holding the bottle, smiling serenely.
Oh, no actor has earned their $50 day rate more than those two bit players.
Holy moly. There's a couple
God.
people that went to the bar afterwards.
Oh, and just as an added bonus, if you're on your third or fourth rewatch, check out the woman in the background who is absolutely not keeping it together and losing her shit that Orson Welles is this drunk. She's chuckling in the background, and it's funny as hell once you notice her.
She looks like the lady that played Lieutenant Drebin's boss in the Naked Gun commercials. Remember her? She went on to play Lydia Soprano, the guy's mom in the early days of The Soprano before she passed away. But it looks exactly like her. Her first name is Nancy, and I'll remember her last name in a minute. But yeah, it looks exactly like her.
Yeah. So anyway, to put a button on this Patreon giveaway, I do want to say, I don't know that this is the final word yet. I'm going to keep people abreast of this because I want to tell you how it goes and so that no one else is making the mistakes that I make. But so far, it looks like by keeping it public and by making it available to anyone to post the correct answer, that it's okay to do this giveaway. And it's such small ball that I doubt I would run up against any legal hiccups anyway, but mainly my big concern is the terms of service with Patreon, and they so far seem to be okay with it.
I was very impolite and distracted you. What was your answer to spreading it out over time?
Oh. Well, no, you were correct in that's what I do. Sometimes it posts at 2 a.m., sometimes it posts at noon, sometimes it posts on a Saturday, sometimes it posts work days, non-work days. So that way different people of different walks of life and of different geographic locations get a chance. Yeah, exactly.
That's super smart. Fantastic. Now that was one that I would have never guessed because I knew that it wasn't right. It was against their terms of service to do a raffle, but I didn't know that there was a way around it. And it makes perfect sense.
I hope, yeah. So I just want to let people know that this is working so far. They greenlit it right now, but I will let you know that if there anything changes in the future. And then also, Brad, I should let you know in terms of efficiency, what I did was I pre-drew 52 drawings during my Christmas to New Year's break that I take every year. That way they can all be scanned, bang, 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 and pre-posted on January 1st to go through all of 2018, and then I'll do it again for 2019. So as much as you can in life, you should work ahead. And so I did all the giveaways for all the year in that week break that I took off.
That is super impressive. I don't know that I'd ever have it in me to do that, but man, I would be so self-satisfied if I did something like that. You should be proud of yourself.
Well, it's the one thing I did right this past year, so there you
go. Well, see if you can do this one right. We're going to take on another question from one of our Patreon backers, and it's a little bit of a long one, but there's a lot here to dig in on. So bear with me, okay?
Okay.
Question is, I've been doing a gag webcomic for almost 3 years now. I've gained about 10,000 combined followers on various social media and even kickstarted a book of my own cartoons, but I seem to have hit a plateau in terms of growth and would love some ideas on how to lift out of it. For a while, I thought going viral would be the answer, but in my experience, that has turned out to be fool's gold. I've had 3 or 4 times in the past year when my cartoons hit the front pages of sites like 9gag, Imager, Reddit, etc., and yet I was disappointed to find out that such exposure gained me almost no new followers. It barely even moved the needle. And yes, Dave, my URL is printed at the bottom of each image.
The URL. So go ahead, keep going.
Just last week, I had a gag cartoon that made most viral on both Imager and Reddit with over 300,000 total views, and yet my follower count on social media hasn't budged. If that kind of exposure doesn't get me more fans and followers, what else might? I'm not looking for a quick fix or a magic bullet. I know building an audience takes years of slow, steady growth, but I'm starting to think that just doing good work isn't enough. Maybe I need to also put some more time and energy into marketing and promotion. Instead of focusing on social media, I assume that if the work is good and the likes and shares will come naturally. What are other ways a cartoonist can get their work seen by a wider audience, especially now that banner ads and the likes are dying out? Should I try stunts like swapping work with another creator? Should I reach out to podcasts and YouTube channels for interviews? If you had to pick three things a creator could do to grow their audience, in addition to just doing exceptional work, what would they be?
Wow.
Oof. Dave, there's a lot there to work with. What do you think?
Well, first of all, that was the longest question we've ever gotten. There was a point there where people were running up, bringing us little cups of water like a marathoner as we ran by.
The best part is when I take the drink of water in the middle of reading it and then just throw the glass or throw the cup like they do in marathons.
You know what's always a dick move is when you see a marathoner drink the water and then throw the cup towards the crowd, and you're like, there's still some water in that, you jerk. We were the ones that handed you the water. Why you gotta get us wet? Just because you're a sweaty mess doesn't mean I want to get my coat wet. Come on.
Thanks a lot for the water, sap. Splash.
It's like kicking sand in a nerd's face. Thanks for the water, champ.
Thanks for the water.
The runner goes by, grabs the water, sips it, and goes, no, the French.
The French champagne.
The French champagne.
Fermented
All right, so
in the
now
bottle.
this question has now fermented in the bottle. Brad, let's tackle it. There's a lot to unpack here, a lot of different layers. What do you want to tackle first?
Okay, so this intrigued me a lot. So I went and I looked at this person's site. I looked at these viral posts that had been made, except on 9gag, because I can't make heads or tails over there. I'm too old. I tap out of that one. But for the rest of them, I went and I looked, and I've got a lot of thoughts. Let's start here. This person's work is good. The illustration is top shelf. And in fact, I would say for my money, the illustration doesn't get much better. The writing, I've seen this person hit some home runs. It doesn't hit as frequently for me as I would like, but I want to caution you when I say that, because that's subjective. Because it didn't hit with me doesn't mean it didn't hit with somebody else,
Sure.
right? So I'd say the writing is good. The illustration is exceptional. In other words, this person is doing pretty good work. Okay, so let's start with a few things and just knock them off. Number one, he says he printed the URL on the image, and I went and I checked that out. And indeed, the URL is part of the image, but in both Reddit and Imager, where you can put a hyperlink to your site or to some place that you'd like to point people to, on the massive viral opportunities that he had, there was no hyperlink. And as you know, if promotion isn't clickable, it doesn't exist in today's world. Having your URL as part of the image that you upload is certainly good. It's like the least amount you should, at the very least, you should have that. But it's not clickable. It's like the lowest.
Right.
Kind
so
of.
real quick though, I'm going to pause you. How do you make it clickable?
By typing it into the post, by saying, for example, on Imager, it's
By the
very
way, that
common.
was amazing. You just did an Orson Welles. It went like this. So Brad, tell him how do you make it clickable? By the French.
Because I keep wanting to say, well, I was going to say by typing it in, but that's not right. And then I got into printing it in, and that's not right. On Imager, it's very common just to say source, and then your website as part of the post itself. You can type that in and make a hyperlink, and that's pretty common in Imager. On Reddit, it seems to be less popular to do that, but most people, when they're posting something there, they'll take the first comment and they'll say, hey, if you like this, check out Facebook, Twitter, my site, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. Good job.
So the bottom line for just the first swing out of the gates. If your marketing isn't clickable, it doesn't exist. Okay.
Right.
Now, I went to this person's site, and I looked at the number of comics that he's done so far this year, and I counted 19. Now, Dave, and these are single panel comics, and I think single panel comics are the hardest things in the world to do. But in terms of the physical execution, it's one image. How many comics do you think you've done this year so far?
I'm a bad example in this case, but I get where you're going with this. Is that Sheldon has done fewer because I've been focusing on Drive and getting the book together.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, there were years where I did 7 Sheldons a week, and I think in total I have about 4,000 Sheldons up on my site. So the archives are deep, and I know what you're getting at, though. That I try to do 3 Sheldons a week, and basically that reinforcement of like there's new stuff to be found here, so come back and tell friends is not happening for this person. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, and actually, it's kind of good news. In other words, this person is feeling frustrated, but I counted 19 cartoons for 2018. He's been doing this, as he acknowledges, for 3 years, and over those 3 years, he's created 146 cartoons. That's an average of 48 a year. That's not even once a week.
Right.
Which I'm not, and be very careful here. I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm not trying to talk down. What I'm saying is your level of success is probably pretty commensurate with the amount of content that you've got out there. In other words, if you were doing better with only 48 a year over 3 years, I'd be very surprised. You should not feel bad about whatever traction you're getting at this point.
Right.
Okay. It's in other words, when we talk about on this show, it's not as important to have that schedule where you say, okay, I'm going to post 5 times a week. And that social media is going to carry you, and that there's a different way for reading. That's absolutely true. But there are still going to be advantages that come from people who follow that old frequent, consistent, significant model that I've been talking about since starting webcomics.com in 2010. Right. Frequent, consistent, significant carries you through, even in this day and age.
And not only, Brad, to emphasize your point, which I think is brilliant, not only in terms of audience growth, but also in just reinforcing how much you're improving and how fast you're improving. You know,
right.
You're getting to your personal goalposts faster by doing more and more frequently.
So don't get disappointed in yourself. But and we're gonna get. There is still the fact that this person has done some things that, let's face it, you and I would love. I think I've hit the front page on Imager twice in the last 3 or 4 years. Reddit, never. I've never hit it on Reddit. So when this person says, 300,000 shared views between the two sites on that one day, let's face it, you'd love to have a day like that. I'd love to have a day like that. So we gotta talk a little bit more about what's significant about that. But I do want to talk about this because I go to his site and I'm reading through the cartoons, and I see a good number of cartoons that feature a heavy Christianity theme. In other words, Jesus up on the cross, a lot of Jesus speaking, and whereas there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, we do have to mention that, especially in today's very divided political climate, and politics and religion have become very closely intertwined. When some of your readers come across that, they're going to turn you right off. Even if it's a very pleasant sentiment that you're sharing, you're going to turn off a certain number of people. And that's not even including the one cartoon on abortion that I saw that is absolutely going to, and I'm not going to say which side of the argument that this cartoon came down on, but no matter which side, there's another 50% on the other side that is going to really recoil at that content. Now, does that mean I'm telling you to keep your Christianity in your back pocket and not to share it? Absolutely not. All right. My suggestion to you with cartoons that hit the Christianity button hard, or hit the or have that kind of theme at all, is to pay very careful attention. And you're probably going to hate hearing this, but I mean it sincerely. Pay very close attention to how I handle not safe for work comics, because it's the exact same thing. Not in content, of course, but in the fact that I know that if I shared a bunch of naked people on my public Evil Inc. site, I would be turning 50% of my readers away.
Oh, I
Okay.
see what you're saying. Yeah.
I make that stuff that has a smaller and more focused and dedicated audience. I make that stuff exclusive, because those people who are going to care more about it, they're going to probably be willing to financially support it. Okay. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have that on your site. I am saying that when people start reading through your archives and see that, you have to understand a certain number of them are going to see that and say, not for me. I'm out. Bink. Okay. Now, if you take that Christianity themed stuff and you make that a Patreon exclusive and promote that as such, it doesn't mean that you can't say on your main site, hey, if you like, I've got a special line of Christian themed comics. It's available at the $5 level for Patreon backers, and it's updated, twice a month. That I could see working a lot better, but I would never mix the two. I wouldn't mix them on my site. I wouldn't mix them in a book, because again, when you've got somebody who might want to consider supporting your Kickstarter, and they see that and they're not into that kind of content, they're going to recoil. They're going to jump out. And as a cartoonist working, especially in a single panel kind of format, the same as Dave does with Sheldon, you want to throw the widest net possible. You want to have a big tent that everybody can come into. And the fact of the matter is, especially right now, where we are in the United States right now, politics and religion are so divisive that I think having that kind of content is going to come with some consequences that you have to understand. Do you agree with me when I'm saying that, Dave?
Well, okay. Lest this person take offense at that thought, I want to put this in
and I don't mean that to be like it's a bad thing, but it does have consequences.
I think you couched it very, very well in that. The better way to think of this is remove any identifier from your work and think of any niche work. To Brad's point, his not suitable for work stuff. For me right now, it could be these, I don't know, anatomy of authors that I'm doing right now. There are people for whom they're like, get back to the Sheldon and the Duck, and I could give a shit about these anatomy of author cartoons that you're doing. And the truth is, I am driving away, to Brad's point, a portion of my audience by doing this niche comic within a comic right now. It just so happens that I want to do it, and I'm sure for you, it just so happens that you want to do it. So more power to you and more power to me. But there's a recognition that certain kind of work, to Brad's point, casts a wider net. And so if you do have work that casts a more niche or niche, I almost did a non-plus there. If you have work that appeals to a smaller, tighter audience, maybe it's worth putting that behind a garden wall so that that group can really enjoy that. To Brad's point, it's not suitable for work. To your work, it might be faith-based comics. To someone else, it might be gender politics or politics in general. To someone else, it might be, I'm trying to think what else is super divisive. Sports teams, for example.
Yes.
You could put behind all your Cincinnati Reds comics and behind a paywall for Cincinnati Reds fans. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of so that you're not taking personal offense at it. Brad's point is that there are some comics, some topics that, while wonderful, while passionate, while amazing, might drive off a percentage of your audience. Now, it also might be the flip side, that it might pull in everyone for whom that is their fandom, their audience, their core beliefs. And so you get a much more impassioned and empowered core group that follows you. And so that's a tricky thing that you have to navigate is, are you casting a wider net, or are you fishing with a pole,
And that's a good thing, though, because that distilled, concentrated readership is exactly who you should be converting into larger tier Patreon backers.
Right. And so let's look at it a different way. Kate Beaton focuses very heavily on history-based comics, right? But I think we can all agree it's a wide enough net where she is both appealing to a small core audience, but also making it approachable to a big audience. And so Brad, in his generalized superhero comic of Evil Inc., it's a niche enough audience where it's got a core group, but it's also he makes it appealable to a broader audience. But he can't do that with Not Suitable for Work, because there's no way my mom is going to be like, "Oh, this is acceptable in an overall storyline," right? And he knows that. So maybe, to Brad's point, it's worth splitting up those audiences amongst your comics. And to Brad's point, maybe I should be doing that with Sheldon. I should have probably done that with my Anatomy of Animals comics or my Anatomy of Authors comics, or anytime I'm doing something that's a subset on the Sheldon site. That's probably the better way to do it, frankly. But like you, I have chosen to keep them all together. But you just have to know that when you do that, you're going to take a hit in terms of driving off a percentage of your audience.
Right. Now, let's drill down a little bit deeper, because I told you, Dave, I could talk about this one all day. And there's another point that I wanted to make, because and I had this listed as a topic for us to talk about anyway, because 2 or 3 shows back, somebody wrote in about how do you build a buzz on Twitter? Remember talking about that?
Yep.
And we talked about some social media basics. And after I listened back to that show, it hit me that I missed a huge point that really needs to be made. And I wrote it up on webcomics.com and pointed our Patreon backers to it. But man, I want to talk about this so bad. So let's talk about building buzz on social media. And I'm going to take another swing at this, because I think we had some good points, but man, we missed a real big one in that conversation. So here's this person, and he's putting out a comic on Imager and Reddit. And and by the way, you're not alone. But that one time that I posted something on Imager that made the front page, I got very little out of it. I didn't pick up a new Patreon backer that entire 2 or 3 days. I didn't see any increased flow to my site that was really noticeable. I get that. So here's a thought I want you to start considering as well. And that is this: if you're looking for social media to create a buzz, and buzz is a very specific term for me, at least. It's a brief social media output that has a huge reaction. One tweet that has 1 million follows and retweets. You're right. That's a buzz. When you put something out and putting something out on Imager and reaching the front page is buzz. And I want to tell you, I don't think social media is about building a buzz. Social media is about building a community. Social media is about the reason.
Oh, Brad, great.
Right?
Great. Yes, no, I'm your hype man right now. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And here's where that leads you, okay? So it's not about making one post that gets 1 million views, because as you've seen, that's fool's gold, right? It's good to have. Listen, I forget about it. I try to do it very often myself. It's not that it's not a bad goal to have. It's not something that you shouldn't be very proud of yourself when you do it. But your focus on social media shouldn't be about building buzz. It should be about building community. And what you should be doing when we talk about the 3 C's of social media, right? Content, commercial, and curation. What your objective there is to build a group of people that follow you, so that when you do talk about Patreon and Kickstarter and comic convention appearances and stuff like this, that there's a group of people that are receptive to that message, okay? Yep. And that's why I don't honestly spend a lot of time or output on sites like 9gag or Imager or Reddit, because there's not a lot of community building that is possible there. Twitter and Facebook, I think, have a lot of, and Instagram I'll throw in, I see a lot of potential for building there. Imager and Reddit, and by the way, I'm perfectly open to somebody saying, nah, you're wrong, and here's why. It might just be that I haven't done it, but for me, I have a lot more community building success on Twitter, Facebook, and slowly Instagram.
Yeah. Brad, I think you're brilliant, and I want to build on this. So not only are you building community, that should not only be your goal to build community, but I think a different word that you're also can latch onto is a relationship.
Yes.
So, and here's what I mean by that. Think of social media as food, right? It's a diet. And when you get to the front page of Reddit or you get to the front page of Imager, what you're getting is you're getting a pure sugar rush, right? It's a lot of action. It's a lot of kinetic energy. It's bing, bang, boom, boom. You're pouncing off the walls. Look at all the things that are happening. All these people are seeing it. But your body's going, I would love a carrot. I would love some bread and a steak to eat, right? It's like you can't just live off of ice cream because that's not how you sustain a body long term. As much as I try,
God knows we try.
That's not how you sustain a body long term, right? And so it's not how you sustain an audience long term, because what you're looking for building long term relationships. The buzz is great. It's an amazing shot of sugar. But what you're looking for is a meat and potatoes relationship, a meat and potatoes community that people will go to eat every day. And let me give you an example of that. So in the last year and a half, I've been focusing more on Instagram and Reddit in terms of posting my comics. Reddit's not so much, but this still belabors the point. Anyway, there are a few cartoonists like Shen, S-H-E-N, and another comic called Poorly Drawn Lines, and a few other comics that I first noticed because of Instagram and Reddit. I had never noticed them before. And the first, they get you with the one that got to the front page, and you're like, look at that. That is an interesting comic. Yeah. And so my immediate reaction, is to read it and move on. There was no additional action taken, right? And that's what happened with your comic. They read it and they moved on. Then I saw them again a few days later. Maybe it was a little further down the page. Maybe it was over on the Reddit comics page, or maybe it just came up in my feed in Instagram. And I recognized the style. So that's the first inkling of a relationship, is you recognize the style. And you go, oh, that's that person I read that joke from. I have a one synapse firing in my brain that's going, oh, I liked that person from that other comic. And now you have two connections in your brain where you go, oh, that was an interesting body of work. And then a couple days go by, you don't see him again on Instagram or Reddit, but then you see him a third time. Now you're definitely more cemented on the style, and you know what kind of, you're starting to get a feel for the type of humor, the world they write from, the point of view they write from. And that happens the next 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th cartoon that you see from them. And this is happening with me on Instagram. And slowly but surely I go click follow, right?
Yes.
And then click follow with the other one. And you start to add them into your repertoire. And now it's taken a year. I'm starting to go, hey, what are these book collections they have? Right? And so, Brad, this is personal, hardcore evidence that it's not the sugar rush you want. It's the slow meat and potatoes of they've been cultivating me as an audience member and going, hey, did you like this one? Here's another one. Didn't like that one? Okay, how about this one? Oh, you like that one? Good. Let's do some more. Here's another one. And they're showing up slowly in my feed, and slowly but surely they're building up a bigger and bigger place in my memory and in my overall enjoyment of comics. And so I've started to seek them out, and that's a big move. And so to Brad's point, they have built me up as a community member, and they have, to my point, they've built a relationship up with me. And it's not the sugar rush of the front page. It's the slow meat and potatoes of regular work. Brad, what are your reactions to that?
No, I in other words, it goes back to that frequent, consistent, significant thing we talked about. Also, its buzz is about quantity, and community building is about quality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? In terms of the response that you get. So no, I agree 100%. Now, this person had a few other things, and let's just, I want to make sure that we're thorough, but I want to make sure we talk about this, but they're going to be real quick hits. Banner advertising, he mentions. Honest to goodness, I think I bought, over the past, 18, 20 years, I bought maybe one banner ad. I do not believe in paid advertising because, man, oh man, I better be getting, if I spend $10 on a banner ad, I better be getting $20 worth of something out of it to show what I've got for my money. Yeah. And man, I've never see that. So I don't do. And with social media, which is free, You cannot get me to pay for advertising. So no, I don't think you should buy advertising. Should you reach out to podcasts and YouTube channels? Only if, and this is going to sound mean, and I've never talked to this person, so for all I know, they're sparkling. But if you can really light up a microphone, if you are really good, a great talker, if you're interesting, if you're funny, then yes, you should go and try to get podcasts and YouTube interviews and all that. But unless you are a really good talker, it's not going to do a lot of good. Nobody's going to listen to you drone on and on about your comic and then say, "Oh, thank God that's over. Now I'm going to go read his comic." So I say that because in cartooning, there's a reason people like me choose cartooning, and it's because we're more comfortable behind a drawing desk in a room shut up off to the side of the house. It being a sparkling radio or TV personality isn't among our core values. It isn't what we do real well all the time. So I don't know that that's where your answer is going to be either. Right?
Yeah. Right. So, okay, Bradley, my friend, I think we have very well put the nail in the coffin on that one. That's a great question. It's sort of an evergreen question.
We either put the nail in the coffin of the topic, or we put the nail in the coffin of a guy that used to be our Patreon backer. I'm not sure, or not his coffin, but the coffin of of his love for this show. I don't know which, but no, I really think that's something that we should talk about honestly and frankly, and like I said, I think the work is good enough, but I don't think you should expect great things out of hitting Imager's front page, because social media is more than that.
Well, and I still think it's not a fun or sexy way to say it, but I still think that the real clicks of success start to happen in the 5 to 10 year range, not in the 3 year range.
Yeah.
And that's not fun to say. That's not exciting to say, but it takes a certain body of work, and it takes also a body of working publicly that you're getting better doing,
Yep.
And just having the archives up there will eventually bring more and more people in too, because you'll start to attract super fans, and they will dive through the archives and then email their cousin, or share it with an old college buddy or something. So I honestly think you're on the right path. Keep on keeping on, and maybe have a listen through Brad's advice one more time, because I think Brad is smart. That's my summary of Brad Geiger.
That remains to be seen. But let's go on to another Patreon backer who's got a really interesting question. You ready for this?
I'll happily read this one, Brad.
Okay, go right ahead.
It goes, Dave and Brad, the French champagne. No, okay. Dave and Brad, in the recent podcast with Kazu, he mentioned having a publishing house that's excited to do comics, and that's Scholastic, obviously. So how do you go about getting a publisher excited about comics or a specific project if they're not typically known for comics or typically known for that kind of project? Or wouldn't you want to? Brad Geiger, I already know what your answer to this is going to be. I have known you for 2 decades, but let's hear it. Let's hear the answer that I know it's going to be.
Back at Alma College, when everybody was joining fraternities, and Alma was a really, really small college, and the fraternity sorority system, the Greek system, was the only social structure on campus. And I never joined a fraternity. I couldn't get my head around it, and it didn't seem like a good time to me. And so I wasn't an SAE, I wasn't a TKE, I wasn't a Zeta Sig. I was a GDI, which stood for God Danged Independent. And that's a true story. There was just a handful of us, and we were referred to as GDIs,
or as I like to call it, LONELY. That's what I like to say.
There was a lot of that too. But
oh, you know what? Now I feel bad. I shouldn't have made that joke. What a jerk! What a jerk!
No. It's fine. It's over with now. I can talk about it now. But but and this is not something you should aspire to, but I have to be true to my own nature. And my first thought is, why do you want to work with a publisher in the first place? But notice that that's just me being, a curmudgeon. But the real and you're right in the last sentence. Why would you want to try to convince a publisher to get excited about comics if they're not? Think about this. Your best case scenario is that you got this publisher that doesn't want to publish comics, isn't interested in publishing comics, to say yes to publishing your comic. Your best case scenario is now you've got a publisher with no experience, no expertise, no slightest fucking fart in the wind about how to promote, distribute, and publish a comic. That's your best case scenario.
Yeah.
So my question is, why are you even thinking about this?
Because you're basically, even at the best case scenario, you get somebody coming and going, I mean, I guess comics are all right. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what's good. They don't know what's bad. They don't know the field. They don't know how to market it. So if comics are not their focus, you're basically asking a jet pilot to become a farmer, or
right.
A fisherman to work on your car for you. It's like they don't necessarily know what they're doing. And so, yeah, I also think, Brad, that there's an element of, and I get the desire to want to work with a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I have built a very happy career flying solo. I actually, whenever I see and hear the numbers that publishers offer up front with a percentage, down the road, I'm always like, well, that's a sum, I guess. That's, I guess one other way to say it is I'm always underwhelmed by what published authors are making, aside from a few key friends who are doing great.
Yeah.
So I think that is always a limiter on me, but I get the idea of the sort of the imprimatur of success and quality, and also the joy of letting someone else handle it. It's getting on the plane and knowing you don't have to do anything. The pilot is going to get you there, right?
Right.
But the dirty little secret there now in the world of publishing is that a lot of publishers don't do what they used to do because the money's not there. So you're having to do your own marketing. You're having to set up your own signings. You're having to do all this stuff. So it's not like it was maybe in the 60s or 70s where, you were being carefully handled and manicured and all that sort of thing. Now you're kind of doing what you would do anyway as a self-publisher for a lot of authors. But to get back to Brad's central point, it's a little bit like someone at a bar going, well, I don't know if he or she is into me. I don't think they are, but maybe I can convince them. It's like, why would you want that as a relationship? And why would you want that even for a little fling? If someone's not into you, they're not into you, Wait, why are you laughing at that?
Well, because I'm just the opposite. I've always said I would never be a member of any club that would have such low standards as to include me as a member. So I'm just, which I think is a Groucho quote. But but I'm right there with you. Why would you want somebody to like you who doesn't like you?
Right.
And here's the other thing about what you said about publishers, because I've talked to a few people about this. And so one of the reasons that publishers take the big cut on the profits of a book that gets made is because they pay for the printing. They're the ones that put the book together. And traditionally, they've marketed the book. They've advertised, they've promoted, and all of that. When you talk to a publisher now, one of the first things they're going to ask you is, what's your social media outreach? What my response to that would be, and this is, by the way, this is why you don't see me at a lot of these meetings, but my response to that would be, if I'm going to be doing the marketing on this book, you're going to take a lower cut and I'm going to take a bigger cut, because the reason you got that bigger cut is to pay for marketing. And if I'm going to be doing marketing, then I'm going to get paid for it, right?
Right. Yeah, it's it is worth saying there are a few publishers like Scholastic or, I don't know, Image that I would love to work with, because they both understand the market, they get the market, they almost intuit how, just because they swim in those waters, how and where comics work and how they can best market it. So there's a few out there that exist, but it's not like if you sign up with Viz Media or IDW or I'm trying to think of somebody else. any small to medium sized comic, it's not like you're in the money and you've been crowned by the kingmaker. You're very much still in the trenches if you sign with a small to medium sized publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Yeah.
and if you go to a small to medium sized publisher that also doesn't know comics, what are you signing up for? You're signing up for no marketing intuition, no insight into comics and things you might learn from. And you're not getting paid that much. So, like, what are you doing there? What's happening? What are we doing here?
What are we doing over there?
What are we doing
that's
over
the
here?
only that you make a really good point there, Dave. That's the only thing that would that's the only publisher that I think I would work with, and that would be if I was doing an all ages comic. I would be knocking on Scholastic's door and very happily telling them how many Twitter followers I've got.
Yeah.
And when then you'd see me eat all my words with a big fork and spoon because I think, especially for children's stuff, young ages, young adult, graphic novels and comics, Scholastic's got it going on, and I would be kissing their little feet.
Right. Well, there's also, separate from that individual project, one of the reasons why I would like to work with a Scholastic or an Image, or I'm trying to think who else I'd be willing to work with, maybe Andrews McMeel, is there are certain publishers in comics for whom I want to learn from. Do you know what I mean, Brad? Like, I want to watch how they take one of my projects and how they market it, or how they bring it to press, or how they prep the files, or how they do this or that, because then I can take it back to my independent cartooning and go, I see what you did, Scholastic.
Yeah.
Now I have your contact list and I'm contacting all those press people myself.
Right.
And so, because there's only so much you can glean on your own, and sometimes it takes 5 to 10 years of being a cartoonist until you, say, build up a press list or build up a list of contacts to go for printing, or all the things that it takes to build a career. And so I do see a tiny advantage in learning from them so that you can jump through a few hoops faster in your own independent cartooning. But broadly speaking, Brad's initial point, I think, stands, which is, why would you want to convince somebody that doesn't really love you? You don't want to marry somebody that doesn't love you, and you don't want to go with a publisher that doesn't like comics and may not like that project of yours. So
your best case scenario is pretty dreary.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's not what you want, basically. It's not what you want.
It's not. All right, so let's knock down another question from a Patreon backer.
All right,
and
let's
do it. Says this. Hi guys, hearing you talk about giving up all but your favorite conventions led me to thinking about the sacred cows of your business. I wonder, what are the things you should probably sacrifice, practically speaking, but you're just not ready to part with because they remind you of the good times of why you love being a cartoonist? Like the stuffed animals Dave still has from his childhood, but he doesn't really need them. He just feels better knowing that Mr. Bumbles is still there. Sounds like this person's been peeping into your windows over there. You better pull your shades down. How can you put a price on keeping the love alive?
How can you put... Okay, so this is a great question, because this is a version, Brad, wouldn't you say, of the gambler's mentality? But it's like the gambler's mentality plus time. Isn't that a good way of saying it?
Yeah.
So, Brad, real quick, so before we go into my answer, real quick, give an explanation of what the gambler's mentality is.
So when we talk about gambler's mentality, especially when it comes to comic conventions, we talk about the fact that you say, oh, this convention didn't do so well, but next convention is going to do real well. And then you might do a little bit better at that next convention. You say, oh, things are on the upswing. I better do another convention. And then you do your third convention and you lose everything, the profits from the one before, and you didn't even make a profit on this one, and you keep going, and you keep focusing on these little incremental changes instead of really taking a more sober look at the nuts and bolts of comic economics and saying, in a realistic way, did I turn a profit? Here's everything that I spent. Here's everything I earned. Did I earn more than I spent? No, then that wasn't a good thing for me to do, and I probably shouldn't do it so much. Instead, we keep saying the next good convention is just around the corner. And if you listen to cartoonists talking to each other at a convention, you hear gambler's mentality stuff all floating all over the place because they'll be talking about stuff like this. What do you think about the floor layout this year? I don't think this floor layout is as good as last year. I think my table placement, if I would have a better table placement this year, I wouldn't be doing as badly as I did that last time. And you hear all of these people trying to reason through why they're not doing better, or maybe if they're having a good weekend, why they are doing better. And it all has to do with external factors, whether there's enough VIP photo opportunities, whether there's too much, whether the floor's laid out right, whether your shoes are tied, whether they're not, whether your underwear is too tight. It's all of this stuff. And the focus is not on where it should be. And I'm going to argue strongly that in a comic convention, your focus should be on dollars and cents.
Yep. And so to Brad's point, and to answer your question, I think Emerald City Comic Con is probably a show that I should take the sacrificial hit on at this point. And I'll put it in cold calculating money terms for you. So I just spent a month doing a Kickstarter that ended up bringing in $116,000, right? And that's great. That's amazing. And that's going to carry me through for a couple years on that project. But Emerald City Comic Con, it's 5 days of travel for me and probably another full day and a half, maybe 2 days of prep to get up there in terms of getting all the stuff together and getting it shipped and getting it prepped and printing certain things. So it's a 7-day thing that I'm going to. And I think I make $8,000 at Emerald City Comic Con. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but and then you take away expenses, and I'm basically making less than $1,000 a day. Fine, lovely, it's a nice profit, but is my time better spent going to Emerald City Comic Con, or is it better spent working on that project that's bringing in $116,000 at a Kickstarter? You know what I mean? Right. But here's the thing: the enjoyment factor and the gambler's mentality of Emerald City Comic Con. I always think oh, it's going to be a $10,000 or $15,000 show. It's going to be great. This is the year where it's going to pay off old sugar daddy over here. And so I keep doing it. And frankly, I keep doing it because I kind of remember the good times when Brad and Chris and Scott and Dave Malky and Ryan North and all of Topatico were having such a fun time at past Emerald City Comic Cons that I've infused current and future Emerald City Comic Cons with a scent that maybe they shouldn't carry anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe they don't carry anymore because Brad ain't going anymore and Topatico ain't going anymore. And all those names that I mentioned aren't going anymore. So the friendship and the relationships that I would cultivate aren't there. And so maybe I should cut it away. And I just haven't yet because it still makes just enough money where I'm like, I don't know. I really enjoy going to that one. I guess I still make money. I guess I'll keep going. But it doesn't make me what I used to. It doesn't make me what I want to make from that show. And that's a thing where emotion is overriding logic. And so you're right that I probably should sacrifice that one, practically speaking, but I'm just not ready to part with it. So Brad, what's something you should be sacrificing, but you're not ready to part with?
You know what? I almost wonder whether I should be asking you that question because I feel like I'm pretty cutthroat. In other words, if something isn't working, if something isn't providing a certain amount of value, I don't do it because the fact of the matter is I can't. I at this point I'm kind of spread so thin that if I start monkeying around with stuff that it takes up time and doesn't have value, I'm going to end up looking for a day job again.
Yeah.
So and that really is how my mind works. It's like, dude, you got to make this work. You cannot screw around, or else you're going to be in trouble. So I don't know that I have. And although if you had one that is something that came to mind, I certainly wouldn't be. I wouldn't bristle if you said, "Well, what about this other thing you're doing?" But I nothing comes to mind. What do you? Do you have a suggestion?
I will speak on Brad's behalf because he won't do it. The thing that he should probably sacrifice, practically speaking, but he's not ready to part with, is the time sunk that with his friendship with Dave Kellett, because that is not paying off. That is not. There's no return on that, and frankly, all he gets is abuse. He should just.
That's a return
cut his bait.
That you do not measure in dollars and cents. And of the things that I do that don't return dollars and cents, that is one of the favorite and top things. So that's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah. Okay. In all seriousness, there's another thing that just popped into my mind that maybe if I was being honest about it.
I love it when you get really uncomfortable when I pay you a compliment.
And quickly change the subject.
Yeah. Your voice was up here. Your tempo was blah 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 blah. I paid you a nice compliment. Your voice went down. The tempo got slower. You really can't take a compliment.
No, that's the Irish.
You're a
in me.
nice guy. You're a nice guy, and I value my friendship with you, Dave.
Oh, my cheeks are going flush. Stop it.
This is great. I could torture you for the rest of the show.
It's the worst. This is like you're holding my hands and saying, you're valued, you're a good person.
You're a snappy dresser, too. Your niece was full of shit.
Now, let me tell you, that we both know that's a lie.
That may have been a stretch. So what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say the other thing that practically speaking, the other thing that I could probably sacrifice, but I keep because I love it, is drawing with pen and ink. And I'll tell you why. Speed wise, time use wise, I can draw something digitally so much faster and frankly more effectively if I do it digitally. But I still love, my heart is still in the game of pen and ink. Like I love it. It makes me happy. And the sort of salve on the wound of like the wasted time there for drawing digitally or drawing pen and ink is that I do sell those originals. And that does end up over the course of a year, selling Sheldon originals usually ends up being somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 a year. So it's worth doing on some level, but it's not like would I produce more work though? That if I was doing it digitally, probably, but it keeps the love there selling those originals. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I gave up drawing with pen and ink a long time ago, and I got to tell you, I not only do I like it better, I think the quality of my work improved because I can take things that are clearly like out of proportion. Like if I draw somebody's head too big, that's a real quick lasso and resize, and I'm constantly doing that. So I'll never go back to pen and ink, but I do miss being able to have those originals out. So I could see, especially you, and I know your originals go quickly. I'd have a hard time giving that up too.
Well, it's also to this questioner's point, there is just a weird satisfaction that comes over with a physical piece of art that you finished and can hold up.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, as proud as I am of Drive, and I work maybe 4 to 8 times longer on a Drive comic than I do on a Sheldon comic. But even when it's done, I don't get the same weird twingly satisfaction feeling that I get when I hold a physical Sheldon that's done,
Yeah. No, I totally get that.
So I don't know that I'll be walking away from that, even though I should. And then the only other things that I can think of are, and this, I'm like Brad, I'm more mercenary. If books stop making me money, I would drop books like a rock. I've not completely, but I've almost completely stopped doing posters just because the shipping costs have made that unmanageable to get to people at a profit margin that I like. I've switched to pins because the profit margin is amazing. So I'm very mercenary when it comes to business decisions in terms of merch. Don't you think, Brad? I think we're both good at that.
Yes,
but
without a doubt.
There are probably, if there are things that hold our heart even long after they shouldn't, it's probably the emotion of being around other cartoonists and the emotion of drawing a certain way. I think you and I have succeeded because we're largely able to make a cold, calculated call on our business stuff, but maybe not so much when it comes to the heart. Right, Brad? When it comes to the heart.
When it comes to the heart, it's harder for us to part.
That's right.
But I think we've got time for... Are you done with that question asker?
Yes, I'm done with that question asker.
I heard you say questioner, and I was going to just put one on my side so we were balanced. So we've got one more that I think might be a fun one to wrap up with. So here's what this Patreon backer says. It says, can you talk about when you're introduced to a cartoonist who is apparently a big deal, but you've never heard of him? Oh. I love that question. Has that happened to you, Dave? Have you ever, somebody comes up and says, hey, Dave, here's Ethel Berman. Aren't you going to be nice to meet her? And you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know Ethel at all.
So yes, that happens to me all the time with cartooning. And you and I would like to think, I'm not trying to be egotistical about it, but I would like to think that we're kind of tapped into who's doing what in comics and what's happening.
Yeah.
But it's a big and weird enough world where every once in a while I'll meet somebody and be like, oh, this is Ethel. Oh, hi, Ethel. What do you do? And you're like, oh, you don't know? Ethel has won 4 Eisners and has 3 million followers on Instagram and just got the national medal, the book medal. And you're like, what? I've never heard of Ethel. And then you feel like
Ethel's
a real
gonna be
dummy.
talking about you on Twitter tonight, and you're going to find out that you've got 100 hate mails in your inbox tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, it's also I got to tell you this story. So as a way of explaining this, here's how bad I am. Like every once in a while, my wife will drag me to a Hollywood event. And I started chatting one time to this person over the chips bowl, the chips and salsa, and I go, oh yeah, I'm Dave. I'm a cartoonist. So what do you do? And this person goes, oh, I'm an actress. And I go, oh, neat. Did you recently move to LA? No, I've been here for about 10 years. I go, oh, neat. So what do you do? Do you do theater? Do you do what? Do you do like commercials? Oh no, I'm on television. And I go, hey, how great for you. Do you have like a walk on extra roles every once in a while? Nope. I have a show. And I go, oh, neat. Well, anyway, nice talking to you. My name is Dave. And she goes, oh, hi, I'm Amy Acker. Nice talking to you. And I didn't know who it was. Just a dummy, just a big dummy, just stumbling through this conversation like a dumb shit, just not knowing who she was. And my wife walks up a second later, goes, oh, neat, you were talking to Amy Acker. Was she nice? And I was like, yep, had no idea who she was. Super.
I could just see Dave, shoving chips into his mouth as he's talking, saying, what do you do for a living? She goes, well, have you ever heard of television? And he goes, yeah, do you own one? Just completely oblivious.
Just a big dummy. Didn't know that she was in a cabin in the woods. Didn't she know that she was in Much Ado About Nothing? Didn't know that she was in Dollhouse. Didn't know any. Just hey, you look like a nice person. Let's chat for a minute. And then just woofing away on the chips as I'm like, so, what do you do for a day job while you're trying the acting at night? What do you do? Just an idiot. Anyway, so that's my long roundabout way of saying that when there's a lot of cartoonists that I get introduced to and I go, oh, you're a cartoonist. Neat. Well, keep chasing that dream. You're going to get there someday. And they're like, I have 5 Eisners. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, of course.
Yeah. Well, don't give up on the doodles. That's good. That's good too.
Your little doodles will get you there somewhere. I make $4 million a year from my cartooning. Oh, of course. Yes. Well, nice to meet you, Ethel. No, has that ever happened to you, Brad? Do you ever get a cartoonist that you don't know?
I'm having a hard time pulling. I'm sure I've done that, but I'm having a hard time pulling up a specific. Although what I will say, it's not that different from when somebody comes up and you've met them and you cannot remember for the life of you how you know that person. And it's the most awkward, especially when they come up and say, hey, Brad, how's it going? And they start saying stuff out of your life and stuff. And you're like, I don't know who you are. And you start, using those really lame, hey, you, how are you?
Right.
It's the worst. But no, there's so many really amazing people out there. And I have a tendency to forget everybody that I've ever met. So I'm the worst when it comes to that stuff.
What's weirder nowadays that we live in a world of avatars is that you'll meet someone, you'll have a nice conversation, and then later on you'll get home and you'll be like, oh, that's the person from Twitter that has the green avatar with the smiley face and the exclamation point. And you're like, oh, I didn't know who that was, and then you figure it out 2 hours later. That's
why I think people ought to use their photos too. That happened to me last year at PAX Unplugged. There's this person that I know from Twitter and often, either exchange a few words on Twitter or I'm always liking his stuff and it's super nice guy. And he stood in front of me and talked for about 20 minutes and walked away. And it wasn't until he tweeted about being at PAX that I realized that this was this person that I thought that I'd see on Twitter all the time. And it's like, geez, I think people ought to have to walk around with a little placard on their chest with all of their different avatars so I can know who they are.
I just need something that, for me, in any social situation that says, hi, I'm an idiot. Feel free to talk to me like I'm an idiot. I won't remember who you are or this conversation 6 weeks from now.
Talk to me like I'm Orson Welles at a Parmesan commercial. And just assume I'll forget everything.
I have a little a label on my lapel that says, "Hi, I'm an idiot, and I'm still fermenting in the bottle."
Well, Dave, join the crowd. And on that note, I gotta tell these nice people that they've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, the editor of Webcomics.com and the cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my pal Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by the very talented Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions at www.woodsong.media.
Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/Comic Lab, so we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/Comic Lab.
Ah, the French champagne. Fermented in the bottle. Ah, the URL. The runner goes by, grabs the water, sips it, and goes, "No, the French." Dave and Brad. Ah, the French champagne. No, okay.